Okay, in the first tutorial we looked at importing the data into an import table. So in your database now you should have all of the raw data imported into this import data table. The next thing we want to do is actually append all of that data into the appropriate tables of our relational database. Before we do that, we want to actually validate this data just to make sure that all the data stored in that import table is actually valid before we put it into the normalized tables. So to do this, we're going to create a table to contain valid data. We're then going to append all the data from this import data, and through appending it we're also going to check that it is valid. Then once we've appended it to the valid data table, we can then use that valid data to update all of the other tables. So to do this, the first stage in this process is going to be to create a table to store the valid data. To do that, you would obviously click on create a table in design view, add in all the field names, put in all the correct data types, and make sure you've applied any of the properties as well. To save time, I'm going to cheat slightly. I've got a completed version, so I'm just going to copy my table from there, and I'm just going to paste that in. You might want to pause the video now and actually create your valid data table. I'm just going to paste the structure across. So if we look at if we open up this table, it's got no data in at the moment. If I go into the design view, you can see here these are all the fields that you need to create, and they will all have appropriate settings in the general column and so on. You can pause the video now whilst you create that valid data table. Once we've got this table created to store the valid data, the next thing we're going to do is to create a query, okay, that's going to append data from the import table into this valid data table. To do this, we first create a new query by going to the Create tab, go to Create a Query in Design View. We're then going to add fields from the Import Data table. That's where all our data is stored at the moment. So we add that table to our query. We're also at this stage going to change the type of query. This is going to be an append query. So if we click on the button, append query button at the top there, this asks us then which table we're actually going to append this data to. So we're going to put this into the valid data table. That's stored in the current database. So select the valid data table and then click on OK. The next step in the process is to add all of our fields to the query, and this can be done by double clicking each one in turn. Just go through the list, double click each one, and we'll see now that each one has been added into our query. That one wasn't selected for some reason. Right. So we've got all of the data in there. What we're also going to do, we're not going to use the driver ID as it is in the import data. We're going to set up our own driver IDs for this valid data table. So to do that, we need to add some information into this first column. Okay. What I'm going to do is create a new driver ID. So the field name is going to be driver ID. So we put driver ID and then a colon. And then the following code I'm going to enter, which will create a unique ID for each driver using information that's stored elsewhere in the table. So first of all, open up a square bracket, and this will get a piece of information from another field in the table. So I'm going to make up the ID comprising of the current car number, so that is lowercase, current car number, the next piece of information that's going to make up the driver ID is going to be an underscore. So I put in the ampersand symbol. That means that we're just adding the current car number to another piece of text or information. I put in a single quote, I put my underscore in, and then close off that single quote. Then want another ampersand sign. Then I'm going to take the initials of the driver. Now to do that, I'm going to put in a rounded bracket, then a square bracket, and I'm going to say driver first name in the square bracket. So that's taking information from that field, and what I'm going to do is take the first letter of the driver's first name. What I also need to do, I've just realised I need to put in here the word left. Now that means it's going to start from the left hand side, it's going to take the first character from the left. Okay, so it takes the first character from the left of the driver's first name. I'm also going to add the first character from the left of the driver's surname. So I type in left, bracket, square bracket, driver, last name, close off the square bracket, a comma, and then 1. That means it's taking the first letter from the left, and then I'm going to close off my my round brackets. So in effect, this should now set up a driver ID which consists of the car number, underscore, the driver's initial of their first name, and the driver's initial from their surname. There are other pieces of validation I might want to do to this query. For example, the years in F1 column, I'm going to say that the number of years that these drivers have been in F1 must be less than 25. So I simply put the criterion less than 25, and that means that any driver with a number greater than 25 in that field will not be appended to the valid data because it's invalid. You can see that it's going to append each of these fields to the appropriately named field in the valid data table. That's all the validation that I'm going to apply in this case. So I'm going to now save the changes to this query. I'm going to call it append valid data. Yeah, two P's in append. So append valid data. Okay, and we could run this query now. If we look at the import data, there are 32 records in the import data. Currently, the valid data is empty. And if I double click on this append query, we should now find, it's run that query, and we should find that the valid data, sorry, let me try that again. I haven't clicked to enable, the security message has blocked that for the moment, so I need to enable content. Okay, now it should work. So double click this, you're about to run an append query. This will modify data in my table. Well, yes, that's what I want it to do. So click on yes. It's going to append 30 rows. That sounds good. So click on yes. Now I can see that the valid data table contains 30 records. If I look at my import data, that contains 32. So if we look at these particular two records, Philippe Massa, it says he's been in F1 for 90 years. Well, that's clearly a mistake, but that's been validated, and we can see that those records are no longer in there. You can also see here that our driver ID has worked. It's picked up the car number. Okay, put an underscore, and it's taken the first letter from the first name and the first letter from the surname. So we've created unique IDs from the data which is already in the table. That is how you would validate your data. The next video will explain how we then append the data into all of the appropriate tables.